Welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. This is episode number 72. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Conrad Weaver. I'm your host for the show, and my goal with this podcast is pretty simple: to bring you stories and conversations that can help you live a healthier, stronger, and more productive life, both on and off the job. This content is completely free, and I will always make it free for you. All I ask in return is that you hit the subscribe button on the podcast app that you're using and share this episode with someone who you think should hear this content. And thanks so much for being here today. My guest is Linda Kokoros, a mom, an advocate, and someone who knows firsthand the pain that can come with the first responder profession. She lost her son, Alex, a dedicated police officer, to suicide. Instead of letting grief silence her, she's turned her loss into a mission to support first responders and their families so no one else has to suffer alone. Linda's story is powerful, it's emotional, and it's filled with hope. We're going to talk about the foundation she started in Alex's memory and the Hope Beyond the Badge podcast that she created, and the work that she's doing to build a stronger support system for the first responders in the Boston suburbs. Plus, we'll dive into an upcoming screening of PTSD 911, so stay tuned for that. This conversation is real, it's raw, and it's deeply personal. So wherever you are, whether you're driving to work or unwinding after a long shift or just taking a moment to breathe, I hope you'll stick with us because you are not alone and your story matters. Now, here's my conversation with Linda Kokoros. Linda, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what brings you to the microphone today, and what's your connection to first responders?
Yeah. My name is Linda Kokoros. I am a first responder family member. We lost our son 6 years ago to suicide. He was a police officer in the town of Abington, Mass. At the time we lost him. So that's my connection, and that's what brings me here to talk today.
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry for your loss. And it's
Thank
something
you.
that so many families across the country have experienced, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a tragedy. It is a
Yes.
tragedy.
Yes.
So tell me about your son. What was he like?
Alex, he was a feisty young kid, many teenagers. He was very much a rebellious teenager growing up. He has 4 siblings: Stacy, Christina, Francis, and Ailish. And he absolutely adored his family, very much so, and his siblings. He was a great kid, funny kid, always cracking jokes, loved Christmas. Growing up as a kid. As he became an adult, he definitely always wanted to, be something and prove himself that he could be something. He was married, had 3 kids. So always wanting to better his family and provide for his family, starting off with a small apartment, right, when he got married first, and then moving into a nice neighborhood, and then evolving into a nicer neighborhood, just to wanted to provide for his family. His kids and his wife were everything to him. And he loved his family so much, but he was a great man. He was also going to law school.
Wow.
Very, very smart kid. School resource officer in the schools, and also an officer in the courts, providing those informations. But yeah, he was a great guy.
What got him into law enforcement, do you know?
When he started off in law enforcement at a college officer, policing, and then just wanted to evolve and expand into something that was, I suppose, not more action, but a bigger department where there was more room for him to grow as a person. And he obviously loved law, right? He was going to law school. So he obviously loved that and then wanted to expand. And he lived in the town of Abington at the time. So I'm assuming that he ended up in Abington Police Department. So he was working in the town that he lived in.
So as a family member and as his mom, and you're
Mhm.
probably not around him. You probably weren't around him every day.
Yeah, correct.
But what were some of the things that you started seeing? If you're looking back at his journey,
Yeah.
what were some of the, were there signs in his life that were maybe telltales that things weren't quite all coming together for him
You mean as an adult or as a kid?
as an adult, and while he's working in law enforcement?
Yeah, he definitely had. Alex was a very strong-willed adult person. If there was something that was, I mean, I'm talking about department area. If there was something that was that he felt that someone might not have been treated right, or if there was something that um, wasn't going right in the department, he would speak up for sure
Mm.
with the administration. And I'm sure there were times that he probably got into trouble for speaking up. He was on the union. He was a union. He was a union guy in the department, so he would definitely start to be at loggerheads with the administration. At the time when Alex was working in Abington, it was known very much so, but we weren't aware of it. He didn't start to talk to us about all the goings on that were negative within his department. But it was when his life, his personal life, and his professional life started to fall apart,
Mm.
so to speak, was when he moved home with us.
Mm.
And that's when he started to open up, because we didn't know anything. So there was no
Mhm.
signs of that until he came home. And that was 8 months before he took his own life.
Mhm.
So he was going through a divorce.
Mm.
I sort of have to give you a bit of background of that. He was going through a divorce. There was infidelity
Mm.
happening in his home, and he was devastated on it from his wife's part, right? So he was devastated about this and had a really, really hard time accepting that. He wanted his family to be where they were back when they were
Mhm.
happy.
Mhm.
He was devastated. He was heartbroken. Um, During that time, also, um, he he worked in a very toxic department.
Mm.
Administration were not supportive of mental health
Mhm.
and first responders. So it was very, very much so. He was not going to administration to say, I'm struggling, I need help, because it was not supported at all.
Mhm.
Um, Definitely much so. And he did share that with me. There was a 3 months before he passed, um, there was a police officer that was shot in the line of duty in the town that I actually work in. So town over for him. He responded to help on the call that was called out, and it was very much a public line of duty death with a shooting, because a civilian also got shot, and
Mhm.
um, so he responded to the call, and when the officers, were all, escorting this police officer to the morgue. His department was not allowed to escort, and his department were not allowed to fill in for officers in the department where this other officer was working. He was devastated when he
Mm.
came home and moved home. It really hurt him that their department was not allowed to go. And the reason being is that there was many officers that were laterally going to other departments to get out of his department.
Wow.
Many. They were extremely, extremely short staffed. And it wasn't uncommon for them to have to pull triple shifts.
Triple shifts.
Triple
That's
shifts.
crazy.
It
That's
wasn't it wasn't uncommon.
wow.
So now you can sort of get the feel or the picture from the picture I'm painting. Extreme exhaustion, right?
Mhm.
Sleep
Sure.
deprivation, no sleep. And then, there's in a toxic environment where they were not being supported. And then in Alex's case, he was also going through a lot of personal stuff, and
Sure.
he had nowhere to turn
Mhm.
for that help, because no one was talking.
Mhm.
especially in that time. I can't unknow what I know now that I didn't know right 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But we were lost, Conrad. I mean, there was no support from department, and that really was validated after we did lose him, because we did not even get a call from the administration to
No kidding.
say, no, to say, I am sorry for your loss.
Wow.
He probably knew, the chief I'm speaking about, he probably knew and expected that he was going to get a mouthful if he did call.
Mm.
But I would have had a small amount of respect for him if he had have called, known he was going to get a lashing from us as a family. If he had have said, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
That did not happen. He would have earned a small little respect.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not happen. And still to this day, we have never received a call. He is not the chief in the department now anymore. He's retired. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
So the department is now allowed to flourish, I suppose, and get the help that they need and support and build morale and all that type of stuff. So that was sort of where Alex, I can only speak on Alex,
Sure.
Alex and our own experience. But there was no support for us as a family. So with that, when we lost him, we were alone. We didn't know where to turn. There was no one handing us a phone number as a family. After we lost him, to say, hey, we can't help you, but here is a number that you can call with resources for able to give us guidance as a family. There was nothing. And to be honest with you, I thought that was the norm.
Wow.
I thought that was the norm, that we were left to deal with all of this ourselves. So Alex's buddies in the department, took over, so to help him with the funeral services, and they still are very kind and always keep in touch, and they are always in touch with, for his birthday, for his anniversary of his death. They will always be in touch and remember him for sure, and they're struggling too. All of those folks who were there, many of them have left the department since Alex has gone, and they moved on to different departments, and some of them are not police officers anymore. But they always reach out, and we are there for them as they are there for us. But as far as the administration, it was hard, and I only learned. We only learned afterwards, watching other families, and eventually 3 years after Alex's passing, that my husband stumbled to an organization by accident. Really, it was Blue Help at the time, and now First Help, and we stumbled across them, and he reached out to them, and that's when we were connected with other families who were going through a similar situation as we were. Being able to connect with other families was amazing.
Mm-hmm. You talked about how Alex was struggling, with the divorce and all that going on.
Yeah.
But that probably was a snowball effect of what was going on at his department and what he was experiencing. So that was
Yeah.
creating chaos in his life,
Oh, absolutely.
which then created chaos in his home life and his relationships, and it
Yeah.
all just snowballed.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It was overwhelming. There was no, I feel, looking back on him, everything was all just jumbled up together, and there was no being able to separate any of that what was going on. So in his head, it was just chaos. Chaos that he couldn't break through. And I mean, when Alex came home, I was the one that was having the conversations with him. He would seek me out. We would sit out at the deck at nighttime. You would think he would have talked to his dad, but his dad at the time was diagnosed with a very debilitating condition that we did not at then he actually didn't have a diagnosis at that time. It was about 6 months after Alex passed that we eventually got a diagnosis for him. But the diagnosis was a lateral vestibulopathy disorder, so balance, which created a lot of anxiety for him, and couldn't move around the house, stopped driving, the whole thing. So my husband was sort of stuck over there, constantly thinking about how bad he was feeling, with what was going on in his with his issues physically, with his head. And then so Alex, when he was home from work, or not taking the kids or that type of stuff, or not going to law school, when he was home, we would be having conversations sitting out to deck at night time. And, he shared with me and let me in. He did let me in, about how he was feeling, about his family. He just, I know he just wanted his family to be back together, but he also did share with me what was going on in the department, knowing now that there was no separation in that. I mean, so he was taking that into work with him.
Sure.
And also what was going in work was also coming home with him.
Sure.
And which also added to the stress and the anxiety and depression that was going on in him. As far as like accumulation of trauma, he saw a lot of bad stuff, and that also weighed heavy, which he did share with me. When we were having those conversations, did weigh heavy. So there was a lot of stuff, all mixed up and jumbled together. Yeah, so there was a lot of chaos going on, for sure.
What do you think, besides a change in leadership, what do you think would have made a difference for him?
Being supported, having someone to say, it's okay, this is normal. If leadership within his department, what you're going through is normal emotion. You're human. Let's get you help and support that you need. For sure, that would make a huge difference, not only in him, but all the other officers that were experiencing it too. It did not come because there was a micromanager that was and somewhat of a narcissist that they were working for, right? That was I can't even put the name as a leader because he wasn't a leader, right? But yeah, that's what they were dealing with. But that would have made a huge difference, for sure.
And do you think that, has things changed there? Have things changed in that department that are perhaps being handled differently now and better for the officers that are still there?
Well, the new leadership is new in there, very new since September of 2024. So he has a lot of, I suppose, building trust. So I think he's new. He seems like a good guy. He did come in and have a conversation with me. And, I have been in talking with the department about families of first responders, and he and his deputy definitely do have open minds that they want to change the morale and the culture within the department. So time will tell, right? I mean, someone can say words. Words don't mean anything if it's not followed up with action. So I'll wait and see. Let's leave that at that.
So all of this has led you to start a foundation.
Yes.
So talk about that. What do you guys do? What is it, and what do you guys do?
Yeah. So it started off very innocently, actually, when we lost Alex. Someone gave me a blanket when we lost him. And it was such more, he gave myself and our family a blanket. And it was somewhat of a comfort to let you know, I'm thinking of you. He was a captain at the time in the fire department in the same town that Alex worked in. And he walked in. I own a little cafe here in the town of Weymouth, Mass. And he walked into the cafe and said, I want to give you these families just to let you know we care about you. We're here for you. And that meant a lot. So about a year after Alex, we lost Alex, started going into 2019, the end of 2019, and into 2020. I became the fixer, first of all, for the family. I had to work, but I had to be the strong one for the siblings. I fell into that role very easily, watching who was struggling, just being there for them emotionally. Didn't let the family see what I was going through. But I had a lot of first responders. It's very much a hub for first responders coming into the cafe. And I had a lot of first responders coming in, senior responders, people who were on the job a long time and coming in and sort of counseling me. Again, my husband, was going through his stuff. So I couldn't talk to him about what I was going through or even mention Alex at home. There was just that if we didn't talk about Alex or mention his name, well, then it wasn't real. And he was just at work and we weren't seeing him. And so I couldn't mention his name. Or if any of his buddies came into the cafe and I would go home, and I would say to George, some of Alex's buddies came in, his hand would go right up straight away to, I can't talk about this. And I would have to leave it. So I wasn't talking about it at home. I became that emotional sort of fixer for the family and watching them and making sure they were okay. So a year and a half after we lost him, I wanted to do something in his memory. We set up a memorial fund, the AGK Memorial Fund, with the purpose of actually making some blankets, buying some blanket kits and no-sew things, right? And to be able to invite some of his peers, those guys who were reaching out to our family and especially to me at the cafe, they had easy access to me. Just be able to walk in the door for a cup of coffee. And so I wanted to invite them to our home for Alex's birthday and have them continue to say his name and to buy some kits, blanket kits. And we were going to make them that night. And so for Alex's birthday in 2020, right, we were having them come over and also our family to get together so that we, instead of just having food and drinks, we could do something of a healing nature by making a couple of blankets together. And they were going to leave with them. My intentions were they were going to leave with them that night, not for them, but to give them to somebody who they feel might be struggling and might need a little bit of comfort. And it would come from our family and from them. So March 2020, COVID was very much on the rise. And Alex's birthday was on March 14th. And the country was just about to close down 2 days later, right?
Sure.
March 16th, everything shut down, and especially restaurants. And so we got wind that everything was happening. I had said to the guys, listen, can we put this off for 2 weeks or so? Because I'm not comfortable having people coming over to our home. And they were like, yeah, we're not comfortable either. So we said, let's wait for 2 weeks. Well, a couple of years later, it happened, right? And the blanket still never left me. The idea still never left me to do that. So once it was safe for everyone to start to come out of hibernation, so to speak, right? We wanted to start it again. In the meantime, first responders started to coming into the cafe, and so the AGK fund was set up, and in the meantime, some first responders started coming into the cafe, all uniforms, police, fire, EMS come in all the time. It's not uncommon to have 4 or 5 different rigs outside the building coming in and getting their coffee, get free coffee on us every day. And I'd always say hello to them and always have a conversation with them. But the conversation started to change on their end. And it was some first responders coming in and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And pulling me aside over to the corner in the cafe and started very openly sharing with me that what they were going through. and their struggles. And that blew me away, Conrad. It blew me away. And it wasn't only one person, it was multiple of different people. And it was very frequently. And it blew me away, first off, because for the first time, I realized that Alex wasn't the only one that was struggling. Because I thought for that full year and a half, he was the only one. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of shame with that. With folks that would come into the cafe, and I'll start to get into that. But it was eye-opening. Wow, Alex is not the only one. And then secondly, it was, I want to help them. Mm-hmm. How can I help them? And the only way that I could help them was to drop my own fear of being judged. For a long time, for that year and a half, we have a big picture out in front of the cafe, and customers would come in and recognize, the last name on the picture and say, same last name, is he related to you? And I'd say, yes, he's our son. We lost him in whatever date, it was a year ago, it was 6 months ago. And I would never say that we lost him to suicide. Mm-hmm. Because I had a fear that I would get a reaction or an eyebrow or a gasp that would be, in my head, my perspective was I was being judged. Our family was being judged, and they didn't know our family. They only knew me as the owner of this cafe, but they did not know our family, and I would not mention it. So when these guys started to come in and share with me, I knew, oh my God, it's not only Alex. I want to help them. And they were sharing with me that they could not share in their departments or any of their peers because it's a sign of weakness about talking to this. And something said to me, you need to start talking about this. A voice came to me. And so when people started to come into the cafe, I added in, we lost him to suicide, and I would still get those reactions. I would still get the eyebrows, and I would still get the gasp, but I did not have the fear anymore. And that's coming from my heart. I did not have the fear anymore of being judged, but it was an opportunity for me to have a conversation, to change the conversation about suicide, and that dropping that stigma, and it's okay. And that it wasn't our fault. Sure. And it wasn't our fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't our family's fault. And that led into, the AGK fund, and that led into many first responders and me having many conversations with them. So I knew if that guy was sharing it with me, well, then the next guy who wasn't saying anything, hey, you know what we're doing? We're making these blankets. And so what we did is we started to, I started becoming really vocal about mental health and first response. I started taking courses, mental health first aid, psychological first aid, emotional first aid, assist, applied suicide intervention training skills, and really wanted to know, hey, I wasn't causing any damage further to these first responders. I wanted to know, how could I be able to watch for those red flags that I wasn't aware of before we lost Alex? Sure. I wasn't aware of the red flags. And that was a big deal for me. I want to know what these red flags are. And because no one told us to watch out for this. No one brought us in and said, hey, this is the stuff that your son is going to endure over the course of his career and personally, and they could all jumble up together. But these are the signs. You won't recognize it as trauma. You won't recognize it as depression, but you'll recognize it as signs of behavior changes. We weren't aware of all of that. No families are. No one gives you a manual, right? So, yeah, no one gave us a manual, and I wish they would. So anyhow, the blankets came about, and from these first responders, there was one special first responder that came into the cafe, and he was coming in for a while. He wasn't opening up about his own struggles, but I knew he was struggling, and I just let him coming in.
How did you know? What was that? What was those signs that you could tell?
He was definitely hypervigilant. He was definitely, had some paranoia going on. He was constantly looking over his shoulder, and I felt he was sussing me out to see was I trustworthy before he would open up to me.
Sure.
And so it stemmed in from very just minor conversations, and then it built on talking about mental health and first response in general. And he also let me open up to him about Alex, and he let me share with him about Alex, and then eventually he came out and said, I'm not good. I'm not doing good. And I said, I know. I was just waiting for you to come out and share that with me. So that sort of stemmed into, to that with him, but also the blankets. So the blankets now, we do a monthly blanket making night every month. DAGK fund buys these kits, funds the kits, and then we reach out to the community, and we have 60, 70 volunteers every month to come in and make these blankets. And that first responder that I told you about, he was a firefighter. He was also a combat vet. It was a lieutenant on the fire department. And he shared with me about an organization called On-Site Academy. They're in Westminster, Mass. And they help first responders go through trauma treatment and educational stuff about trauma and what they're going through. And he had gone to On-Site Academy for help with what he was going through. And so the blankets, I wanted them to go to somewhere that they would get to first responders. And I knew they were being treated there. So now, every month, we've been doing it over 12 months now. But every first responder that attends any program that is offered through On-Site Academy receives a blanket upon arrival. And they get to use them while they're there, and they're working through that tough stuff. And then now they're able to establish a connection with this blanket.
Wow.
And then they get to take it home with them. And it's a beautiful thing. It started off with just a 5-day residential program they have, and they were received so well from that program that the owner and founder of On-Site Academy, Dr. Hayden Duggan, he reached out to me and said, Linda, these blankets are going so well. You have no idea how much of a difference these are making to these first responders. There's a little card inside of them about Alex and about our family, and that we care about you, and that with the hopes that you'll continue on your healing journey. So they receive it, and we have volunteers make them, and we can't do them alone, right? It's a team effort. All our volunteers are come back, and it's grown every month. Word has gotten out. So those blankets are called the Hope blankets. Hope, healing within, optimistic for the future, the power of positive thinking, and embracing where you are now. Because I believe a first responder who is struggling cannot heal from where they were before, because they're no longer the same.
Sure.
But embracing where you are now and moving, taking that experience and moving forward so that you can thrive, moving in your life, and that there is hope. And so that's what those blankets mean. From that, then we led into the podcast. The podcast is called Hope Beyond the Badge. And that same first responder, his name is Jay Bailey. He is my co-host on the podcast. And we interview police officers for, all first responders, just like yourself. We have, and families of first responders also. And that has been amazing. That has been a huge part of my healing journey, because I get to talk to these first responders who have the courage to share their story, all for the one purpose of helping someone else who is listening. And that's where it came out. So how that happened was I was asked to do a 1-hour radio segment on a radio show, and about mental health. I had become very vocal locally. Word had sort of gotten out, and I said, is this going to cost me anything? Or to do a segment on your show? And they were like, well, we'll give you a discount and this. And I was like, oh, no, I can't afford this. And one of my staff at the cafe said, Linda, do a podcast. and you can talk about what you're passionate about. You can talk yourself, you can interview people. And I had said to Jay, I need a co-host. And he said, are you asking me? And I said, I am. And he said, I'm in. So both of us have been in that. So he brings his experience as a veteran and a combat vet, and also in the fire service. And I started to bring my own experience from the family side of it. And when we have these conversations, so that stemmed from there. And then from the podcast, hearing many first responders talk about their families and how they ruined their families, how they ended up divorced or even a second marriage, and how some of them are only starting to begin a relationship with their families, their children again. And that was sitting very heavy on me, Conrad, because I was relating with that. I was that family that did not know what was going on. Our family, Alex's siblings, did not know what was going on and not know where to return. And if we had had that education, and I'm not only talking about families who have lost someone to suicide, but wanting to help the families not get there, right? Not to get to that place of a suicide or losing their loved one, and that there is resources and support for you. But one of the things I learned was there's so much support for first responders. Unfortunately, they don't reach out to get help until they actually need it. Right. Meaning they're in a crisis situation. Hopefully change in the conversation is helping them with that before the crisis. But the families, that's sort of where I'm at in with my own experience was, why isn't there support for families before? First help is there to pick those families up in the aftermath of a loss of a suicide, right? And to support those families. What about before? So we did talk to many organizations like Onsite Academy and McLean Hospital. They have a program for first responders called the Leader Program. We did talk to all of these organizations, and Dr. Hayden Duggan said, Linda, you know what? We do soup to nuts for first responders. We do debriefings in departments. We do fusings. We do, critical incident stress management trainings, and we go out to departments for these trainings. But we've started to miss, and we even help widows, right, of line of duty deaths. They have a Wings program. Kathy Menon is amazing. All affiliated with Onsite with widows after losing a first responder in the line of duty, because that's what her experience was. But that family educational part, we haven't really gotten into it. And I said to Jay, we have to do something. So we did a family readiness workshop last March, and it was inviting families of first responders to come.
How was that attended? Was it?
Oh, we had 100. Yes, it was amazing. We had 150 first responders and their spouses and families show. And that was the first time. We just got flyers. We were knocking on doors in departments. Can we come in? And I wasn't sending out an email. I wanted to see someone face to face.
Sure.
And I wanted to say, listen, we want your families there. I got to share my story about, we weren't aware of all of this. So let us give your family the education and the tools. So we invited about 14 different organizations to this night. They were all set up in like job fair tables, right? And they, we put flyers in departments everywhere. And we had 150 people show up. It was amazing. And the families show up. So what we did is we had some of these, big organizations present what they could do to help the first responder. For the first time, these families, these spouses were hearing this, because they don't know about this resources, because the first responder is not coming home and talking about it at home. And the whole point of it was, if we can directly connect these families to the resources available to them, well, then it would avoid them being stressed out or avoid seeking help, because a lot of them don't want to go to the departments, right, for fear of retribution, the gun taken away from them, right? If we can connect these families to the resources, well, then there's help.
Yeah.
And instead of, a family being in crisis, meaning a family's falling apart, like I've heard so many first responders and spouses say, I'm getting ready to kick him out because this drinking business when he's coming home is enough, and we can't deal with this anymore. And he's angry all the time. And, there's also domestic abuse and happening amongst all of this with all of the behaviors that develop over a long period of time. And then eventually just all comes out in that first responder. Instead of getting that happen, we wanted to give these spouses and families the information to say, oh, wow, instead of saying, I'm getting ready to kick you out, you need to talk to somebody because, and I don't know who to call for you. Now they were being presented with, wow, there is resources out there. And they left with a folder that night with all those resources in it. So instead of getting, I don't know who to call for you, let's open up this folder.
Yeah. Now they have it.
Now they have it, right? Oh, man, I wish I had had that folder.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Going back to your cafe, the first time some of those firefighters and first responders came in and when they pulled you aside, was that strange to you? How did that feel for you?
Oh man, yes, I'm into the feeling thing. It felt, to be honest with you, it felt like a relief because I thought Alex was the only one. There was two feelings to it. There was one of a relief for me, because wow, I was so ashamed of even talking about this. And these first responders are going through something too. And they had also shared with me, they had lost a first responder to suicide in their departments. And that was something that a lot of families don't know about because you're in this bubble, right?
Sure.
Alex, all we knew was Alex was a kick-ass police officer. He was going to law school. He was smart. He loved his family. He was a great guy. We didn't know all the other stuff that was behind all there. So if I didn't know about it, well, then there was other families that didn't know about it either, right? So it was somewhat of a relief. And then immediately it was, I want to help them. I want to help them. I guess looking back on, it was, I couldn't help Alex, but I can try to help these guys. And the first thing was, I need to talk about it. Like I had so many questions. Why can't you talk about it? And they were explaining to me because you will be judged. People will be talking about us.
Do you think that these men and women that came to you, they had seen your journey and knew the story of Alex, and that gave them the ability to put aside their inhibitions to approach you?
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%, no doubt about that. It was very public. Alex's loss was very public. On the news, a lot of times it doesn't go on the news, right? It was very public on the news, and also because Mar Riley's Cafe, right? It was we were here, so we were in the public, and we're very well known in all the communities, not only in the town that we're in, but expanded communities beyond this one.
Was his death publicized as a suicide, or was it just like on the news when they announced this or talked about it? Did they say it was by suicide?
Yes. Yes. And it was very much, mobile command units were there. I mean, when we got the call, about Alex, we did not know he had passed. We got a call to say, there's something going on with Alex. And can you call him? We know that he'll answer the phone to you. So keep calling his phone. And I was out with my husband picking up supplies for the cafe. And when I came out of the store, my husband was hyperventilating in a panic, crying. Again, still no balance, right, going on. So started trying to get him, what's going on. And there was very much a panic situation. we need to get to Marshfield. We need to get to Alex's house. There's something going on. And he told me we need to keep calling his phone. And of course we prayed on the way down the car, constantly praying and redialing his phone, and there was no answer. And eventually we got a call again from the command unit to say, stop calling his phone. We're trying to ping where he is. So stop calling his phone. So there was a command unit that was all on the news. So initially, there was a wellness check put out there for him, and he didn't show up for a training that day. And there was a wellness check put out for him, and there was no phone answered. And I think he had sent someone a text that was alarming, and they put in a wellness check for him. So when the police department went to investigate or to do the wellness check, there was on the news, it wasn't announced that he was a police officer at the time, but it was a man barricaded in his home, that type of way. Yeah.
Wow. And all of that still blows me away that the chief never reached out to you guys. With
blows
all that
me away
publicity.
Too. Yep. No.
Yeah,
no.
That's shameful.
It is shameful. And it hurts still today because, for a while I thought that was what just happened.
Right.
And that your family, he was a guy, regardless of being a police officer, we thought we just had to deal with a family death on our own. And in afterwards, attending other first responder funerals, getting to learn that was not the case, or dying by suicide, or dying in the line of duty. Sorry, that was not the case. It was very, very different, very different, and that still is today hurtful.
Sure.
Yeah, very, very, very hurtful, and also not even. I just interviewed a woman last night, who's part of she's a suicide loss survivor. She lost her husband in 2016. And I interviewed her last night. And we had this connection, and listening to her speak when I asked her, was there support for you when you lost your husband? And she said, right from the word go, my house was full of people of taking this on and that on, and the support. And I cried. I did cry. I got emotional last night because that came up to the surface again for me, where I had let sort of a lot of anger go. That sort of came up to the surface, just hurt, Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, out of this tragedy, the beautiful story that has come out of that with you and your family, with these blankets. So how many blankets have you guys distributed?
Oh yeah. So we make since then, I have to tell you that in other organization in McLean Hospital, it's a mental health hospital, but they have their own separate program for first responders separately called the Leader program. So since then, we've now make also blankets for them too.
Okay.
So for every first responder that goes there receives a blanket in memory of Alex. So maybe 600 blankets in the year. And again, we do small little fundraisers to keep money flowing in so that we can just provide those, buy those blanket kits and the bags that they go in. And then, everything 100% that gets donated into the AGK fund is 100% goes back to first responders and their families. So, what I'm very proud of is that everything that has been happening, the podcast, I never had in my plan, right, to do a podcast.
Sure.
But it just happened based on conversations. And then, from the podcast, hearing about those families, right, and putting on the readiness workshop that one time. And then from there, it was, well, wow, what about support group for families? If a first responder is struggling at home, not suicidal, but they're struggling, you can guarantee the families are struggling too, and the children. So myself and Kathy Minahan from Onsite Academy now do a monthly family support group. Families come, all uniforms. It's not for the first responder, because there is groups of first responders, right? This is for the
families
to be able to spouse, the mom, the older siblings, the older children, to come in and also have a connection with somebody else so that they know they're not alone and that there's resources there for them too. And then it's amazing, Conrad, sitting there and being able to facilitate a conversation with these folks who need that support, and then being able to watch the connection with these families just flow, and the conversation and them supporting each other. It's like magic happening in front of me. It's amazing. It really is. So we're very proud of how far we've come. And just all happened very organically with the one thing, for the purpose, if we can help one family avoid a suicide, but also prevent them from getting into a crisis situation, but also helping a family with support, that your family doesn't have to fall apart. There's hope out there. And we can guide you. I'm not a clinician, I'm not a doctor, right? But I can guide you to resources who can help you. And that's amazing. It's been very fulfilling for us, for sure.
Wow, that's an amazing story and amazing work that you guys are doing. And I know in just a few weeks, you guys are hosting the PTSD 911 documentary.
Yes.
So talk about that. Why are you bringing the film in, and what's going to happen at that event?
Yes. So what we're doing is we want to reach the community. Again, to creating the conversation, breaking the stigma, and helping have people, right? Just general civilians have a better understanding about what first responders go through. And that came from the blanket making nights and the volunteers, and they're coming in to make the blankets and getting to speak about that, and their eyes opening. Wow, I didn't know, I hadn't got a clue about this. Because all they see is the superheroes, right? Of the first responders. Those first responders are coming. They're the ones I call for help. But who's helping those first responders and their families, right? So when I saw that your documentary was out, and it kept on popping up, and I had been listening to your podcast, and I said, I feel this is the next step. And I always try to do something big in March, because it's Alex's birthday in March. His birthday's on March 14th. And we had the opportunity of being able to do this on our March 19th. So we got the license from you to be able to screen the documentary to the public, a public screening. And we have a sold out house full.
That's amazing.
And so what's going to happen that night is we've invited, we'll do a small intro to what the documentary is about. We've invited some families that I know through my own loss come, and we want to honor those families who were left behind. So they'll be in the audience, and we're going to honor their loved ones who they lost. So we'll have them up on slides that night before the documentary. Jay, my co-founder of Hope Beyond the Badge, he will sort of do an introduction to the documentary, and then we'll screen it to the full house. And then and for those who are going to attend or feel they might be triggered, or we will have the Plymouth County Comfort Dogs there. We will have the first responder therapy dogs there in-house. We will have many clinicians throughout the audience who will be there. So if anybody has to leave because they're feeling something, we will have those clinicians able to step outside and have a conversation to put them at ease. And then after the documentary, we have a panel for a panel discussion, a 30-minute panel discussion afterwards with experts in that field. So we have Dr. Hayden Duggan, who is a psychologist, right? And he is going to be on the panel. We have a fire chief locally. We have someone who's on the executive board of the PFFM, which is Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts, who's also a firefighter. We have a police officer who was shot in the line of duty, and his canine was also killed. So those are there. And then we also have a 911, Commonwealth 911, Anthony Landry on the panel, who will sort of represent dispatchers. So we have clinicians, and we also have corrections officer on there who's all in peer support too. So we're going to have them discuss the documentary afterwards. As far as I know, none of them have screened the documentary privately at all. So they're going to screen it just like everybody else. And then they're going to respond to it based on how they feel about it afterwards. And I love the wellness part of it. It's all by peer driven. I hear a lot of peer throughout the documentary, and then also the wellness part of it with Dr. With Chief Gang in there, right, and the other chief and those. So there's a lot of wellness in it, which I love, and then we'll have that discussion about what difference would this make in departments if departments saw it, and how could they make a change? How would that inspire departments to make a change? How would it inspire the community to interact with first responders differently? And families, how would that inspire families to have a conversation with their loved one when they go home? So that's what we're hoping.
I'm really excited for you guys. I'm jealous that I'm not going to be there, but I am coming up. We're doing a screening in Somerville. In a couple of weeks after yours. So it's a big, a couple of months for Massachusetts for the PTSD 911 documentary. So we got some big things planned for that one. We're hoping to get some folks from Boston, from Boston PD and some of those communities up there as well.
And it's and I know it's a big support. You're going to be screening it in April down at the ICISF World Conference. Down there.
That one, I won't be screening it. I'll be talking about it.
I
just got a 45-minute session there. So,
okay.
But we screened it last year at ICISF. Had a big turnout for it there last year. But ICISF has been a partner with us, from the beginning. And so really fortunate to have them on board to support the film. And they actually provide for agencies who purchase the film, they provide some additional training resources based on the film that ICISF has developed. And so if anyone's interested in that, and they can reach out to the folks at ICISF, and Mark Junkerman kind of heads that up, and they do some amazing work there. So, but we're showing the film around the country. I'll be out in Wisconsin, actually, as we're speaking, in 2 weeks. I'll be in Wisconsin, actually just a few days before your screening.
Wow.
And working with the Department of Justice there in Wisconsin. And then
awesome.
I'll be in Wyoming, and actually going to the fire and police games in Birmingham, Alabama in June.
Wow.
So I'll be there for that big event. And so just a lot of things in the work. So working on screening and possibly down in Miami. And I want to do a whole Florida tour of different cities in Florida. But so it's a big year for us. So I'm excited. I'm excited that you guys are bringing it. And
I'm excited that it's the premiere in Massachusetts. It's the first one.
It is.
And so we're very, very happy to be doing that. And then, continuing on this educational of bringing awareness.
Yeah. So how can people learn more about you and your organization, your foundation?
Yes. So at the moment, we're very small. So we're just about building our website. But if they want to reach us on LinkedIn, they can find us Hope Beyond the Badge. We do a lot on Facebook, on social media, and Instagram. Again, Hope Beyond the Badge. Just follow us. We put a lot of events out, like small events throughout the year. And also the monthly support group, right? And the monthly blanket making nights. They're monthly events that we do. And we welcome volunteers and also want to continue to get families to come and get support that you need, right? If you need it. And just know that there is something out there for you, right? Your family doesn't have to fall apart. And so yes, Hope Beyond the Badge, all across the board on all social media outlets and also LinkedIn. for now.
And for those people who are local, what's the name of your cafe?
It's Ma Riley's Cafe. I have my T-shirt
Okay, I
on.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ma Riley's Cafe. We're on 90 Pond Street in South Weymouth, Mass. And we're a little Irish cafe. March is our Super Bowl month
Oh,
because
sure.
we are not a bakery, but we do bake all our own products. So everybody that wants to be Irish in March are all coming to Ma Riley's for their Irish breads because we bake our own, and we're known for our scones and all our different flavored scones and pastries and Irish traditional pastries that we bring into the cafe every day.
Yeah. Well, Linda, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much for, first of all, for reaching out and for hosting the film, and I just pray for your continued success with your organization, your foundation, as you guys support not only first responders, but their families. I think that's such an important thing that you guys are doing. And so, so congratulations on that. And, out of the deep pain that you have experienced, something beautiful has blossomed out of that. That's amazing.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I this happened for me, not to me. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So thank you again for, having me on. And, I hope this conversation is able to help someone else.
Linda, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for coming on the show today. And I look forward to seeing you in person very soon. And please remember, you are not alone. If you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world. Oh, one more thing. Be sure to check out all the upcoming screenings that are listed on our website. We may be coming to a city near you, and if you want to host a screening of the PTSD 911 documentary, please fill out our screening form on our website, ptsd911.com/screenings. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for watching. See you soon.